Imagine that the most handsome, charismatic person stares you straight in the eye and says, "You're special. You look good, and you're good at what you do." He seems to know just what you like. He reads your innermost thoughts, and you feel like you've discovered a soulmate, a deep intimacy. You're experiencing one of those rare, fleeting moments that makes life worth living. Before you know it, you're involved in a deep, personal bond with a psychopath. What are psychopaths? Do you know any? Personally? As recently as 2008, most people were just getting on with their lives. Their struggles, their joys, their victories, their defeat. And then came the financial crisis. The only thing we can say with certainty is that this is not the first time we've screwed up. As a matter of fact, we're getting better at it. I'm sure you've heard a lot of people say that we live in unique times, that society is in trouble, that the situation's critical. The ancient Chinese said, "A fish stinks from the head." But is that true? Is the answer really so simple? Did you make the mess? I didn't. So who did? I think it makes sense to look for some explanation from the people who are in charge. At least for somebody to blame. At first glance, it does appear that the world's elites, politicians, bankers, business leaders, have all, once again, completely failed in their given roles. What do we really know about people in power? We trust our lives to them. Their decisions affect millions. We know that some of them, at least, are not the nicest people on the planet. Could they be psychopaths? In their book, appropriately titled Snakes in Suits, psychologists Robert Hare and Paul Babiak propose a new and provocative term, the corporate psychopath.
Psychopath means crazy.
Crazy.
Crazy person?
A crazy person.
Crazy person.
Very crazy person.
Creepy people.
Psychopath?
Her.
Him.
Well, it's an individual who has a psychopathic personality. And psychopathy is a personality disorder. But they're able to work within a business or an industry or an organization. They're very different than what we commonly think about a psychopath as the serial killer. These individuals have the same personality characteristics, but through education, through where they live, they are able to get jobs in big business and do fairly well for themselves.
A psychopath is somebody who, as I've said before, is without a conscience. Not because he doesn't have the intellectual capacity to understand the difference between right and wrong. It's because the emotional connection with cognitions, thoughts, and so forth is absent. Some of the characteristics would include this stunning lack of empathy, lack of concern for other people, the ability to look at other people as mere objects. When normal people are processing emotional material, there is greater activation in parts of the brain that nature's designed to handle emotionality. You can tell the difference between an emotional and a neutral event for these individuals, but for the psychopaths, you can't. It looks like parts of limbic region, emotional brain, hippocampus, amygdala, don't function the same in psychopaths as they do in other people. These are individuals who are extremely egotistical, self-centered, lacking remorse for what they have done, knowing exactly what they're doing, and what they're doing is manipulating and deceiving other people for their own ends.
A lot of the psychopaths that I've known, and I've assessed over 160 of them, a lot of the ones that I've known, they don't have an evil appearance or an evil feel. They're out to con and manipulate you. So they're charming. They're very charming, and they come across as being extremely easy to like. Most of them.
What you see in the movie is the dark side of the personality. What you see when you actually interact with them is the mask that they're presenting, with only a glimmer here and there of the dark side. And so if we learn from headlines and movies that psychopaths have this dark side, and we go out looking for it, we're not going to see it. And we'll conclude that they don't really exist. Or if they do, I've never met one. But you probably have met one. You just haven't seen behind the mask.
Fundamental mistake that most people make, and this includes not only the general public, but people like law enforcement officers who are trying to interrogate somebody, is the belief, the feeling that everybody else thinks and feels the way we do. That if there's an emotional event, say, look at that, doesn't that just rip your heart out? And you expect everybody to get the same reaction. But the psychopath is looking at it, and for him, it's a non-emotional event. When a psychopath is expressing an emotion, is it the Stanislavski method of acting? Is he actually feeling it, and he's able to project what's inside outside? And the answer is probably not. They're using facial expressions and hand movements, body language that seems appropriate to an underlying emotional state, but is fake. I consulted on a movie with Nicole Kidman called Malice, and she wanted me to go down to Hollywood to help her portray what appeared to be a sweet, loving woman, but who's really a psychopath. So anyway, she said, look, you've got to give me a scene. And I thought about it, and I don't know where it came from, but this is the scene I gave her. You've left your apartment, and you're walking down the street, and there's an accident. And then you look at the child who's on the floor or on the ground, hit by the car, bleeding, probably dying, but kneeling beside the child is his mother, and she's emoting. She's going through every possible emotion that would be appropriate for that particular scene. And instead of watching the child and being horrified by the whole thing, you're kind of impassive, clinical, you watch the mother, and then you look at the child, back at the mother, and then you just walk away unconcerned, walk back to your apartment, walk into the bathroom, stand in front of the mirror and mimic the mother's expressions. That's it. The psychopath has learned that there are certain facial expressions, forms of body language that are associated with what other people say is a particular emotion.
Okay, I get psychopath. What's a sociopath?
One of the better distinctions between a psychopath and a sociopath was made in the film Reservoir Dogs. And Harvey Keitel says, you know, I rob banks, and if I have to kill 3 people, that's my job. I don't like it, but that's what I have to do.
Psychopath ain't a professional. Can't work with a psychopath.
That effing psychopath over there, the other individual, he likes to kill.
You don't know what those sick assholes are going to do next.
What we call the snake in suit, the white collar individual will get their needs met through more of the con manipulation or maybe the hardball attitude, right? Whereas and they may not resort to violence like some of the people that I've dealt with that are incarcerated. But when I interview people with the psychopathy checklist, I will often take something out of my pocket and put it on the table. And I'll say, this is the most important thing for you right now. This is what you want the most. And I'll put it on the table, and the offender will be sitting over next to me, and we're doing this assessment. And I'll say, now, how are you going to get that? And with the psychopath, typically I will see the person sit back, and we call that duping delight. They look like, this is a little game. I'm gonna take you on this game. They're very competitive. They'll say, well, I'll ask you if I can have it. And I'll say, no, you can't have it. Well, I'll try to buy it off you, and I'll pick it up at that point because I know they're gonna grab it off the table if I don't. And I'll say, it's not for sale. And then I see that smirk again, and it's like, I'll get it. Well, how would you get it? And most of the time I'm assessing them, so they're smart enough to not tell me how they would get it, but they just look at me and say, I'll get it.